Hello everyone, Douglas here, and welcome to my classic Doctor Who review. And today I will be reviewing The Daleks. And before we do get into the review, I do apologize for my review on An Unearthly Child because of the sound, and it did fade out when I was doing the review on the first story, so I apologize if the sound does fade out in this review. With that, let's dive into the review. This story is the first story for the iconic Doctor Who monster, the Daleks. This story is the first one to be written by Terry Nason, and Terry Nason was known as a comedy writer, and he wrote and created some shows like The Avengers, Blake 7, Survivors, MacGyver, and A Fine Romance. This story is the first one to be directed by Christopher Barry, and he would direct a lot of classics. But this story is directed by two directors. Christopher Barry directs episodes 1, 2, 4, and 5, and Richard Martin directs episodes 3, 6, and 7. In episode 1, called The Dead Planet, we start where we left off when we see the radiation reader reads at danger. We see the first Doctor, played by William Hartnell, Susan, played by Caroline Ford, Ian, played by William Russell, and Barbara, played by Jacqueline Hale, and they are exploring the jungle. We see Ian discovers a city, and I gotta say, that is impressive, and I think they spent the budget for this. We see Susan is by herself, and she has a feeling that she is being watched. And we see a hand, and someone scared her. Inside the TARDIS, the Doctor and his companions hear a tapping noise, and no one is on the scanner. We see the Doctor gets the TARDIS to take off, and then the TARDIS malfunctions because the Doctor faked it so he can go into the city, and he is going to regret that. We see the Doctor and his companions notice a metal case, and they think it's a bomb, but it's not. And the metal box has glass vials. We see the Doctor and his companions arrive at the city, and they all take separate entrances. And are you sure this is a good idea, Ian? Really? We see Barbara is by herself, and someone is watching her. We see Barbara gets trapped in a lift, and then we see a toilet plunger. And we hear Barbara scream, and that is an iconic cliffhanger. And that is the end of episode 1. In episode 2, called The Survivors. No, not that Survivors. We see the Doctor, Susan, and Ian are looking for Barbara. We see the Doctor, Ian, and Susan find a room, and it has measuring equipment. And we see a Geiger counter, and it's at danger. And you should have looked at the radiation reader back at the TARDIS. And we find out that they have radiation sickness. The Doctor tells Ian and Susan the truth, and way to go, Doctor, to get your companion sick. Really? We see the Doctor, Ian, and Susan encounter the Daleks for the first time, and they sound like this. You will move ahead of us and follow my directions this way. We see Ian runs, and the Dalek fires its gun, and Ian is paralyzed. We see the Doctor, Susan, and Ian are reunited with Barbara. I like Barbara's line when she says, "Do you think someone is inside?" And the Daleks are not robots. There is a living creature inside of them. We see the Daleks are interrogating the Doctor. We find out that the metal box housed the drugs against the radiation. We find out the Daleks can't move outside of their city. We see Susan is heading back to the TARDIS to get the anti-radiation drugs, and we see someone is following her. We see Susan got the anti-radiation drugs, and that is the end of episode 2. In episode 3 called The Escape, we see Susan encounters a Thal, and that was the same person that scared Susan, and he was the one that left the anti-radiation drugs. We find out the Thal's name is Eladin, and he is played by Gerald Curtis. We see Eladin, and we see the Thal race, and we are introduced to Denteris, played by Philip Bond, and Treminus, played by Alan Wheatley. We see Susan is writing for the Daleks so the Thals could come to the city. We find out from the Doctor why the Daleks can't leave their city is because the Daleks run on static electricity and they run through the metal floors. We see the Thals receive Susan's letter, but it's a trap. We see the Doctor and his companions are going to catch a Dalek, and they succeed. One of the greatest scenes is when we see Ian gets into a Dalek casing, and that is great. At the end of episode 3, we see the Dalek mutant. In episode 4, called The Ambush, we see a Dalek notices the Doctor, Barbara, and Susan, and the Dalek is about to talk to the communicator, but Susan fakes an escape. We see the Dalek talks to the other Dalek through the communicator, and they know they escape. We see the Daleks are cutting through the door, and they can't move the Dalek casing with Ian in it because they magnetize the floor. We see the Doctor, Susan, and Barbara escape through the lift, and we see Ian is trying to get out. We see the Daleks get through the door and see the Dalek casing, and it's empty. And Ian just got out just in time. We see the Doctor and his companions notice the Thals, and they got to save them from the ambush. And we see a Dalek goes after the Doctor and his companions, and its order is to exterminate. We see the lift is coming back, but they push a statue and they destroy the lift. We see the Daleks are waiting for the Thals, and we see them go into hiding. We see Ian is going to warn the Thals about the trap. We see the Thals arrive, and we see Terminus is speaking to the Daleks, and he is killed. And we see Ian meet Eladin. We find out the planet's name is Skaro. I like Ian's line when he says, "They're afraid of you because they are different from them," and that's true, because the Thals are humans and the Daleks are not humans. We find out that Ian lost the fluid link and the Daleks took it, and that is the end of episode 4. In episode 5, called The Expedition, we see the Doctor, Susan, Ian, and Barbara are arguing about getting the Thals to fight the Daleks. We see Eladin punches Ian, and a good line from Ian when he says, "So, there is something you'll fight for." We see one of the Daleks takes the anti-radiation drug, and one of the Daleks gets affected. We find out that the Daleks are going to explode another neutron bomb. We see the Thals have agreed to help the Doctor and his companions to get the fluid link back. At the end of episode 5, we see Alon get sucked into the lake. In episode 6, called The Ordeal, we see the Thals are attacking the Daleks' instruments. The Doctor and Susan find the power box, and we see the Doctor destroys the power box, and they are caught by the Daleks again. One of the haunting scenes is that when we see Etidos jumps a little too early and he falls, and Ian is holding on, and that is a great cliffhanger. In episode 7, called The Rescue, we see Etidos cuts the rope and he falls to his death. We see the Thals are going to rescue the Doctor and Susan and attack the city. We see Ian, Barbara, and their Thal group arrived at the city. We find out that they are going to the control room. We see the Thals start attacking the Daleks. We see the Daleks die out. I like the Doctor's line when he says, "I might just say to you, always search for the truth. My truth is in the stars, and yours is here." We see the TARDIS takes off, and inside the console room, the TARDIS malfunctions, and a bright light, and everything goes dark. And that is the end. This story is a classic. This story was almost junked, and BBC, what were you thinking? But it was saved by Ian Levine, so thank you, Ian. And I should mention this. What do I mean by junking? Well, here's the thing. The BBC would junk their programs to make room for new programs, and there are stories missing from the archive. And I'm not an expert on this, but there is one Doctor Who YouTuber named Josh Snails, and I will post 2 links in the description on the missing Doctor Who stories. The first one is where these missing stories are, and the second one is how the missing stories came back. When they were making the show, Sidney Newman said, "New bug-eyed monsters." Verity Lambert had bug-eyed monsters, and this story was very popular. And without the Daleks, the show wouldn't be very popular, and the Daleks drove this show to success. According to Adam Martin, this story pulled in 8.9 million viewers, and that is growth. And Verity Lambert saw something in the Daleks. I like the Dalek designs in this story. When you see their pupil on their eye stalk going big to small, and that is cool. The cast is really good, and I think they are used to their characters by now. The Dalek voices by Peter Hawkins and David Graham are good and scary. The sets are very impressive. The script by Terry Nason is good, and the direction by Christopher Barry and Richard Martin is great. And I would give this story a 10 out of 10. So that is my review on the Daleks. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And if there is a classic Doctor Who story you want me to review next, leave it in the comments, and I will see you all next time.